Loud. And
All right. I guess he's off. He went to lunch. Okay. Okay. We'll get started here. Hello to you three people on here. My name is Jessica. I'm the compliance for the Fresno office. And Michael asked me to take over this today and kind of go over with you the changes to the RPA that happened in December 17th. I know we've all been doing a great job learning all about the changes that happened in August, and they've switched things up. And honestly, it's a really good change in my opinion. So if you have not written an offer or received an offer on the updated RPA that happened on December 17th, it's going to look a tad bit different. So I'm just going to go over that with you guys. And feel free to unmute and ask questions if you have them. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Okay. Play. All right. Can you guys see my screen? Give me a
yes.
thumbs up or something. Okay, perfect. Okay. So residential purchase agreement changes that happened December 17th of 2024. We're going to revisit what's going on. Okay, two changes. The first major update was that there is no more SPBB. That's the seller payment to buyer's broker. So the SPBB, let me move this out of the way so I can see my screen. Okay. The SPBB was a form that was required in order for the buyer to ask the seller to pay for the buyer's obligation to pay their broker compensation. So there was a little checkbox in there on section 3G3, and you had to check that yes, you were going to ask the seller to pay for it, and then you had to fill out the separate form, SPBB, and submit that with your offer. Well, now they took away the SPBB form, thankfully, one less form for us to deal with, and they added a space directly into the RPA where you write in the amount. So here is a little clip of that section. This is section 3G3 on page 2 of the RPA. Right here, I've highlighted it, and you just check this box, seller payment to buyer, seller payment for buyer's obligation to compensate buyer's broker. Right here, you literally just write in the amount you're asking for, or if you have a flat fee, or if you have some other type of form that you're going to ask them for. Most of the time, it's just going to be the percentage or the flat fee that you've agreed to with your buyer. Okay, so 3G3 is on page 2. Just check that, and no more SPBB. So thankfully, they've gotten rid of that form altogether. That one is easy, made our life a little bit simpler. Major update number 2. The buyer is no longer required to submit a copy of their BRBC to the seller. So prior to December 17th, you had to prove as the buyer's agent that you had a written buyer broker representation agreement. You had to either submit page 5 of the BRBC, sometimes they'd ask for the whole thing, or the other PSRA form. The seller would request that to make sure that you had a written agreement. But now they've decided that it's no longer the listing agent's job to police the buyer broker agreements, which is nice. We no longer have to prove that we have one because they agree right here in the second part of section 3G3 on page 2 of the RPA. The buyer, by signing this, is actually agreeing or confirming that they have a written agreement with their buyer agent. Buyer affirmatively represents that at the time this offer is made, buyer has a written agreement with buyer's broker that 1 is valid, that 2 covers the property, and that 3 provides for compensation for no less than the amount stated above. Now, if you remember, part of the agreement with the settlement is that the representation agreement has to be more, the same price or more that you're asking the seller to pay. It cannot be less. So it's stated right there that it's no less than the amount stated above. Okay, so you no longer have to prove that you have one. But do you still have to have one? Yes, this is my number one question I get. Is the buyer broker agreement still required to show the property? Yes, that didn't change. You just don't have to prove it to the seller anymore. And as the listing agent, you no longer have to ask the buyer agent for a copy of it. The lender might still request it, or escrow might still request it, and you will have to give it to them, but you no longer have to prove it to the listing side. Okay, the PSRA, like I mentioned before, is also that smaller form that is also still approved. There's only two approved documents for showing homes in our brokerage. So there's the PSRA and the BRBC. I have heard of some other brokerages came up with some touring agreements and stuff like that. That is not what we're doing. We do not allow that or have any of those. So it's the PSRA or the BRBC. Okay, and a quick change to the PSRA, the Property Showing Representation Agreement, is that they have added this little box right here that you can add more than 3 properties. So in review, this is the smaller representation form. This is if you have a buyer that maybe you don't know very well or is hesitant of signing something. And this is a non-exclusive only, you'll see it right there, cannot be exclusive, and it used to just be for 3 properties. So you would have to have done another PSRA and added more properties. But right here, they've added this box where you can check that and you can list more properties. Now, hopefully, by the time you've showed them 3 or maybe more properties, they're going to get to trust you and you're going to build that rapport and that relationship, and they're going to be willing to sign the buyer representation broker agreement, which is the longer form, which is going to hopefully give you exclusive rights with that buyer. That's the best one that will protect you the most. Okay. Any questions on what I just went over before we kind of get into a little video of how to talk about this with your buyer? Anybody have questions or comments?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So Michael also asked me to kind of go over how you can practically talk about this with your clients. And yeah, if some of you have struggled with this, and rightfully so, buyers have never had to pay us before. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of fear. I found this video, and this guy has a pretty good way of talking to his clients about it. So we're going to go ahead and watch this. Let me pull it up.
So what's going to
Oops. So, okay.
so what's going to be your approach in having conversations with buyers about this idea of writing you a check or potentially writing you a check at closing? It feels scary to have that conversation, doesn't it? It feels like, ooh, I've never had that. I don't know how I'd even talk about that. I'm going to give you a script right now that I think can be very effective, and it's focused around what I call a success fee. Just remember that we're never paid in general. I know there's a few agents that take a retainer. There's a few agents that work by the hour, but the vast majority of us, get paid at closing, and only if the buyer is successful. So my starting point of bringing up and talking about buyer representation fees will be, hey, guys, I just want to point out that today we work under a buyer representation agreement. That's going to spell out our relationship, what I'm going to do for you, and how we're going to work together. But it's also going to spell out how I'm compensated. So, but I want you to understand that when we talk about that, I'm not paid a dime. You don't pay me a nickel until you found the perfect right house for you. You got it at the right price. You got the right financing put together. You did the inspections. You renegotiated the deal based on those inspections. You got to closing and you actually closed the transaction. You've been handed the keys. That's when I get paid. If I don't help you get all the way to the finish line, all the way to a home run, I don't get paid a dime. So I'm only paid a success fee. So I want you to understand that. Now, my fee for representation, if you get to the finish line, is X, and you fill in the blank. 1%, 2%, 3%, some flat fee, whatever the number is, whatever you think you're worth. In many cases, though, I want you to understand that when you hear that number, in many cases, we're going to negotiate with the seller to have all or part of that fee paid on your behalf. And if there was a case where the seller wouldn't pay it or wouldn't pay all of it, you're going to know that while we're in the offer writing process, right? Or while we're in the negotiation process. So it's going to be super transparent. You're going to know at any given time. And I'm going to give you a net sheet on each transaction that we're looking at. And you're going to know, hey, what would be my it's an estimate, but a pretty close estimate on my out-of-pocket expenses for this particular transaction, based on what the seller's willing to do and not willing to do. Because some sellers, aside from my fee, some sellers will be willing to pay my fee. Some sellers will be willing to pay for closing costs, like part of your down payment or part of your prepaid expenses. Some people will be willing to pay for appraisals and home warranties. Some will not. Some will say, I'm absolutely not going to do that. It's going to depend on their motivation, the competition in the marketplace. But regardless of all that, when we get to the end, you're going to have a transparent document. You're going to say, here's my estimate of what's going to cost me to buy this house. And then you can make an informed decision. Does that sound good? Now, most people, when you explain it that way, are going to feel completely comfortable, because what's the risk? There's no risk for them. They don't buy anything. They don't spend a nickel unless they get the house they want. And they know the negotiation that's happened with the sellers happen, right? And that they got something or didn't get something. So there's nothing hidden. There's no secret surprise. There's no there's no gotcha. It's just, hey, we're just going to walk you through this process in a very simple, linear way, and you're going to feel comfortable about it all the way along. That's the way we should start explaining this. And if we do this, and we come from confidence, right? We come from confidence because we have competence, because we practiced and rehearsed and drilled. Now we're going to come across really powerfully, and people are going to be excited to work with us, because people like to work with confident people that know their value, people that know that they're worth what they're worth. Guys, this is going to be the solution for you to really get comfortable. And that's what we want you to be. We want you to be comfortable out there in the field, starting to use this, because you're going to have to do it.
All right. What did we think about that?
I thought it's great. I mean, it's pretty no nonsense.
Yeah, I really like how he explained, transparency. You're going to
Mhm.
know every step of the way, you know, what is going to happen. So I think that was a good thing to remind them.
Yeah, we just have to know our value.
Yeah. He comes off really confident in the way he says it too. So I like that. It's important. Your client needs to feel comfortable that you know what you're doing. Any other questions, comments? This one was pretty easy, but I feel bad it's so short.
What do you think about those guys that are that have it listed in the MLS? I need a copy of your BRBC before you can show the property. That's that question I got over the weekend and I called you about. So
Yeah.
is that just a preference? It's not a law, right? It's just a
It's not a law, no, it's a preference. You can let them know that, that you no longer have to prove it, but if they still want it, they can still ask for it. And then, obviously if you want to get a deal done, you can get
Yeah.
it to them. It's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. I think they were just trying to make our jobs a little bit easier for us.
Yeah, I had that conversation with the agent that called me, and I was like, he's a listed agent, maybe he's old school, I don't know, but if you want to get on his good side, I wouldn't argue it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right. All right, thank you, Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
When writing an offer for a property that a buyer has not seen because it's tenant occupied, do I just need the one client representation? Do I need to fill out the shorter showing form, even though they haven't seen it?
That would depend on your relationship with your client. If you had the regular BRBC and you were exclusive, that's going to cover any property that they may want to write on. Doesn't matter if they've seen that or not. But if you haven't really had a relationship with them yet, and maybe that's just the only one, I would go ahead and do the shorter form and just put that one address in there.
Okay, yeah, that's the situation. It's an investor. So this would be the first deal I've written for him. So, okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? No? Okay. Well, this was short and sweet then today. That's it. I'm going to get with Michael and see what he wants in the future going forward with these Monday classes. I think he and I might be switching off. So I will get some information that'll be a little bit longer for you next time.
Thank you, Jessica. I like
Sure.
your setup. I like your the composition of stuff on the back of your screen. It looks good. All I've got is a window. It always makes me look really washed out.
Oh, good. Okay. All
All
right,
right.
guys. Well, you have a great rest of your Monday and a great week, and go sell some houses.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jessica.
All right. Bye.